all of these myths, or at least not completely accurate statements where people say, well, it's all about your Rolodex, your connections, your experience, which certainly helps. But if you're a startup that's really small and you don't have all the connections in that industry, then what do? Do you just die? Do you spend all your money to hire experienced people? You have to figure something out. And so we started testing a lot of different things, a lot of strategies for building sales processes, for reaching out to customers, for finding customers for our products. And it went a lot better than we thought. We started doing really inside sales a little over a year ago. First few months we did it, we had no sales, all rejections. We would have marked up that board with the rejections in a second. And now, a year later, we're at a 7-figure run rate and we're profitable. And we're growing very quickly. And I say that not to brag, because certainly we're not out of the woods yet. We're still just getting started. But to impress upon you that anyone can do it. It's very, very possible for anyone in this room right now to start from nothing and build up to a sales organization that's growing quickly and that is able to acquire customers repeatably at a very, very low cost and quickly. All of the strategies that I'm going to share with you, we tested on ourselves. We implemented every single one of these. Some of the results that we got, once we started doing some of the things that I will talk about, we got a lot more leads, almost tripled our qualified leads, or more than tripled. Most importantly, we acquired those at a more than 90% lower cost per qualified lead than the industry average. So industry average for inside sales, B2B type SaaS companies is anywhere from $40 to $80 roughly is the cost of a qualified lead for most organizations. For us, it was around $4 to $5. And we were able to grow very quickly because of that. And with very, very limited resources, we were able to use a lot of novel tactics and also just new technologies that are now available where we could stick to a purely inside sales model and keep our costs really, really low. Before we talk about that, the really important thing that any startup or anyone in this room who wants to grow their sales pipeline has to really think about and understand is, are you ready to scale? You may have seen there was an organization called Startup Genome that surveyed thousands of startups and collected a lot of data about successful and unsuccessful ones. And they found that the number one biggest cause of failure for startups was premature scaling. That was the number one by far biggest issue, meaning that you are in Silicon Valley, you read about all the exploding fast hyper-growth startups, everything's about growth, growth, growth. And so what happens is that people question.
How do you tell if you've got a product problem or a sales problem?
I'm glad you asked that. That is just what I will get to in a minute. And yeah, things like that where there are a lot of pressures on founders to scale right away and grow really quickly and keep up the growth. And a lot of the times what happens is that people either are automating the wrong things, they're investing in the wrong things, or they're doing things like trying to sell something and hire salespeople for something that is not ready to be sold yet. So everyone knows about product market fit. Obviously that would be the first thing that you should look at. Do people want what you're selling? Hopefully you've found that out before you've actually written any code or built anything. But also then you have to think, well, is your business model a good fit for an inside sales model? Meaning that with every sale, are you going to be gaining money at the end, or are you going to be losing money? because it costs you so much more to acquire that customer. On average, from what I've seen, the cost of sales for the average SaaS company is about 11 months worth of revenue from that customer. So in other words, you spend X amount of money on your lead gen, on your marketing, on your sales team. That customer has to be paying you for 11 months before you get that back. And that is fairly consistent across the board for lots of different price points and different kinds of products, because of course the more something costs, generally the harder it is to sell. So you really have to have a model that fits with inside sales. And there's two approaches. Either you can be an SMB company, where you can think of companies like Yelp or Groupon that get a bunch of money, put together a huge call center, call every small business out there, and pick up as many as they can, and are able to maintain a low price point because they're just calling everyone all the time. Or you are more of a higher priced quasi-enterprise type company where you're at a price point of at least $10,000 a year, where now you can afford to pay inside salespeople. You can now start having longer sales cycles, so typically a few weeks to a few months, and you could still acquire those customers profitably. So either it's a low price point, usually around $100 a month or less, or it's a high price point where it might be $1,000 a month or more. That's usually where most business models, most companies fall. In the middle is the valley of death, where it's too expensive to sell quickly, and it's not expensive enough to pay for the sales team, for the demos that you're doing, for the long sales cycles, and so on. The other thing that we looked at to decide whether we were ready to scale up is customer success fit, as we like to call it, meaning that does your product help customers be successful in their business goals? Is there an ROI justification? Is there an easy way for you to say, well, this product, you paid X for it, and now the results are reflected in your top line, where very, very clearly boosted your revenue by this much. And then you put that in case studies that you do with customers, and you put that in your scripts, and so on. One of the challenges that we had starting out with our product is that a lot of the things that we built and showed to people, the response was, well, yeah, this is nice, this is interesting, but I don't really know how I can make money from this. And that is the worst thing you can hear as a startup, because that is when people will be willing to talk to you and hear your pitch and spend time with you. It's an interesting new product that they're curious about, but they won't actually sign on the dotted line and buy it because they can't justify the business reasons for it. And then finally, the other thing that we looked at when deciding whether we were ready to scale is looking at the size of the opportunity or the market opportunity for this product. Another huge issue that startups run into, they build something for a market that is too niche, too specialized, too small. And it's very, very tempting to go into a small niche market that doesn't have a lot of competition probably, but you're really boxing yourself in at that point because you don't have room to grow. And it would be silly to spend a lot of time building a very, very efficient automated sales process, building analytics and building out all these scripts and everything, and then looking at your market and seeing that there's 5 potential customers in your market total. And startups do that a lot. Yes?
Wouldn't you say, though, that you might want to start out with a narrow target? So if your product, as long as it's not completely boxed and limited to one audience, if you build something that is focused on a more narrow audience and then widen, wouldn't that be okay?
Yeah, definitely. I think the distinction is a small market versus a small slice of a big market. So you can certainly have a segment that you start with as long as there's room to grow. If you have a product that, for example, is only for car companies, you've built everything for car companies, you know, there's a few dozen of those in the world and that's it. There's nowhere to grow without a completely different product. Or if it's maybe a database that only certain kinds of companies or enterprises could use, and so on. But assuming that you've decided that you want to grow and scale your sales pipeline and you're ready and everything lines up, this is how you would do it. So what we're looking at here is a fairly typical sales or lead funnel. And this the different stages vary across organizations, but this is the general structure of how most companies do this. So you start off with a big pool of prospects. Everyone that either has come in through inbound or you found with whatever prospecting tool you started doing outreach to. And then we're qualifying. So some of these become now what is called marketing qualified leads, meaning that you have a form, for example, on your website. People put in information about themselves or their company into that form to get something. You might ask, how much revenue do you have? Or what industry are you in? Or how many employees do you have? And so that's all data that they submit that then goes into your CRM. And based on that, marketing, or you yourself doing marketing, can qualify. So we're only targeting companies of certain size, certain revenue, whatever. After that, some subset of those marketing qualified leads then become sales qualified leads, meaning that not just the numbers or the metrics that they put in make sense for who you're targeting, but now they've talked to either a sales development rep or they've talked to a junior salesperson or someone whose job it is just to qualify, and based on that information, they're in the market for your product, they're interested in buying what you're selling, and then some subset of those then go into your general sales process with your closers and your sales reps, where you do demos, give them trial accounts, what have you. And the mistake that most people make when you're tasked with growing your sales pipeline is that they focus on the top of the funnel. They say, we want a lot more leads in. Where you should be focusing on, where you really want, is the sales qualified leads. That's what you're really looking for. You're looking for more leads that are interested in what you're selling, that are big enough to be able to afford your product, that are a good fit for what you're offering. And so you could grow the top of the funnel all you want really easily. You could get 1 million prospects. You could go to LinkedIn and just message everyone and just spam everyone. But all that does is that makes your sales team less efficient, because now they're wading through a lot of leads that ultimately they'll disqualify. So what you have to think about growing is the sales qualified, the leads that are actually going to buy what you're selling. If we think about the difference between those kinds of leads, the marketing qualification process is looking at firmographics, basically demographics for companies, objective metrics, things like the employees and size and so on. What your salespeople are doing when they're actually talking to these prospects is psychographic metrics. Are they interested in what they're buying? What's their level of enthusiasm? What is the likelihood that this deal will close? What will be the deal size? All of that kind of stuff. And so now we're kind of faced with a challenge of how do we get more of the leads that salespeople will like and qualify. And this is a huge, huge problem, by the way, for all organizations. Most salespeople have to do their own prospecting because they're so dissatisfied with the leads that come in from marketing. So they're only looking at those few basic metrics. And therefore, when you're trying to find more leads that fit these criteria, it becomes a little trickier because you can't just say, well, let's get more companies of a certain size, or let's go to any database and filter by revenue and get or the Fortune 500 or whatever. You have to scale and expand your list of possible prospects in a different way. So the way that most people are doing prospecting now and expanding their sales pipeline is they go linearly through some list. So whether it's the Fortune 500, or it's all the startups on Crunchbase, or it's a list of local businesses, local dentists, or whatever in your area. That's what a lot of people do now, and that's a good way to start. It's a good way to test outreach to a lot of different companies, but it doesn't really scale because you are not creating messaging that is very, very targeted, and you're not finding very, very relevant qualified leads. You're gonna have to discard a lot of those. The strategy that we have focused on at MixRank that has been very successful is expanding laterally, meaning find companies that are adjacent or very, very similar to our best customers. So, for example, instead of going through a list of all of the biggest startups, say, okay, well, this is one startup that we've already sold to or that is far advanced in our sales funnel. Where are the companies that are the most similar to them? Their competitors. Companies that are not their competitors but going after the same market, the same kinds of customers that are selling the same thing. Companies where maybe they are looking for the same kinds of product because they have the same challenges and issues. And the reason that works so well, and that's worked so well for us, is because then we can tailor our messaging and our entire script very, very specifically to that kind of company. And so if we are targeting, for example, just as an example, big data or database startups, then we can really personalize our emails or make them seem personalized. Say, well, hey, we built this product for database companies, and this is everything we do for database companies, and here's our case study with a company that sells databases. And then just send it to everyone that is a database company or with very, very similar to the companies that are already receptive to our messaging. And the practical way to find all of those, some tactics to find very, very similar companies. One of the things that we look at, for example, is searching LinkedIn. So we can search, obviously, for keywords in people's profiles. Another thing that's been effective is looking at job postings that they post. A job posting is a reflection of a problem that someone has that they're looking for a